Chapter 4 of the Adi Parva. Vyasadeva begets progeny through the queens of Vichitravirya. After the last funeral rites were performed for Vichitravirya, Satyavati fell victim to grief on account of her deceased son. Ambika and Ambalika were also greatly overwhelmed at the untimely death of their husband. Attachment is found even in the families of great dynasties. Maya is so strong that one thinks that his family members will live eternally and that he will never die. Queen Kunti was born in a royal dynasty descending from the moon god. Her sons were all born of great demigods and were highly qualified. Still she prayed to Lord Krishna. Ata Vishvesha Vishvatman Vishvamurti Svakeshu me Sneha Pashamimam Chendi Dridham Pandashu Vrishnishu. O Lord of the universe, soul of the universe, O personality of the form of the universe, please therefore sever my tie of affection from my kinsmen, the Pandavas and the Vrishnis. In whatever family one is born, this family attachment is there. The only way to break this attachment is to become attached to Lord Krishna. Queen Kunti continued her prayers to Krishna. Twai me nanya vishaya matir madhu pate sakrit ratim udvahata adha gangivo gamudanvanti. O Lord of Madhu, as the Ganges forever flows to the sea without hindrance, let my attraction be constantly drawn unto you without being diverted to anyone else. It is not that feelings of affection can be suddenly cut off. Those feelings of affection have to be transferred to Krishna, and then one not only has affection for his family members, but to all living entities, because one comes to the realization that everyone is part of the family of Lord Krishna. Upon seeing the possible extinction of the dynasty, Satyavati approached Bhishma and said, "The continuation of the dynasty of the Kurus is now dependent on you. The wives of your brother Ambalika and Ambika are desirous of offspring, and under my order you should beget children by them to continue our line. You should duly marry a wife of good character and install yourself on the throne. Do not plunge our ancestors into hell." Upon hearing the words of Satyavati, the relatives and friends of the Kuru family agreed. However, Bhishma spoke to his stepmother in the following words. "O mother, what you have said is certainly according to the codes of virtue, but you forget my vow in the matter of begetting children. I may have to renounce kingship of the three worlds, the kingdom of heaven, and anything greater that exists, but this vow I will never renounce. The earth may lose its scent, water may lose its moisture, the sun may lose its glory, fire its heat, the moon its cooling rays, Indra his prowess, but I will not renounce this vow." Hearing the words of Ganga's son, Satyavati replied, "I know the vow that you have taken is on my account, but considering this emergency, you should accept the order as duty to the ancestors." Bhishma then again spoke to Satyavati. "O Queen, do not turn your eyes away from virtue. Renunciation of a vow is never applauded in the Shastras. Listen to the story I will tell you, and then decide on the right course of action. Once upon a time, in the days of yore, Parashuram, the incarnation of Lord Vishnu, killed in battle Kartavirya Arjuna for the sin of killing his father. Not only did he kill the followers of Kartavirya Arjuna, but he destroyed the entire Kshatriya race 21 times. When the earth was devoid of Kshatriyas, the queens approached the great rishis and begot children by them, and thus the Kshatriya race was revived. Therefore let a purified Brahmin be invited with an offer of wealth, and let him raise children by the wives of Vichitravirya." Satyavati then, smiling brightly, spoke in a soft voice to Bhishma. "O descendant of Bharata, what you have said is true. I now understand what is to be done in this connection. My father was an honest man, and to maintain pious activities he kept a boat for rowing passengers across the river Jamuna. One day the great sage Parashuram came and requested me to take him across that river. While rowing the boat across the river, the sage became attracted to my beauty and requested fulfillment of his lusty desire. I was afraid of what my father would do, but I was also afraid a curse the rishi might pronounce upon me. The sage brought me under his control. In the middle of that best of rivers he created a dense fog. He satisfied his lusty desires and was very pleased with my submissiveness. Before that time a fishy odor came from my body, but after the rishis' touch a celestial aroma came from my person. The sage told me that by bringing forth a child in the middle of that river I would still remain a virgin. The child born of that union was the greatly powerful devotee Vyasadeva, the literary incarnation of Lord Krishna. He has divided the one Veda into 4 and expanded the science of devotional service to Lord Vishnu. Because he was born in the middle of that river, he became known as Dvaipayana, the island-born. Because he compiled the Vedas, he was known as Vyasadeva, and because of his blackish complexion, he is known as Krishna. He is truthful in speech, sense-controlled, and freed from all sins. If I ask him, then certainly he will beget good children by the wives of your brother. Previously, Vyasa has spoken to me, saying, Mother, when you are in difficulty, think of me. I will come to wherever you are by the speed of the mind. If you are willing, Bhishma, I will call him this very moment. Upon hearing the name of Vyasadeva, Bhishma joined his palms in reverence and said, This sage is truly great in wisdom and sense-control, and would be a fit person to continue the dynasty of the Kurus. Therefore you have my full approval. When Bhishma had said this, Satyavati immediately thought of her son Vyasa, and within moments the great sage came to her presence. Satyavati duly greeted her son, and taking him in her arms, bathed him with affectionate tears. Vyasa offered obeisances to his mother and said, O mother, I have come to fulfill your desires. Command me at once, and I shall carry out your order. Satyavati replied to her son, O my son, recently Vichitravirya, the king of this world, died leaving no offspring, and thus the dynasty of the Kurus is in danger of extinction. Here is Bhishma, Shantanu's son, but he has taken a vow of celibacy, and thus he will not beget children. The 2 wives of Vichitravirya, Ambika and Ambalika, are still living, and I request you to beget children by them to continue the dynasty of the Kurus. Vyasadeva, hearing the appeals of his mother, spoke to her. Since Vichitravirya is my brother, born of your womb, I shall give birth to children that are equal to the demigods. Let the queens observe the vows I indicate for 1 full year. Satyavati replied, There is very little time for vows. The earth is without a king, and the citizens being without a protector will certainly perish. Vyasadeva replied, If I am to give birth to children at this moment, then let the queens of Kashi bear my ugliness, strong odor, and matted locks. If they can perform these austerities, then they will give birth to excellent children. Let one of the queens dressed in clean clothes and bedecked with ornaments wait for me in her bedchambers. Satyavati then approached Ambika and told her of the desires of Bhishma and herself. With great effort, Ambika agreed, and when the right time for conceiving a child came, Satyavati took her to the bedchamber and told her, Your husband had an older brother who will conceive a child by you that will continue the Kuru race. Wait for him here without dropping off to sleep. Ambika then waited in her room, thinking the person to be Bhishma or one of the other Kuru elders. Suddenly Vyasadeva entered the room, and Ambika, seeing him with matted locks, ugly features, and a grim visage, closed her eyes in fear and did not open them once during the time of conception. When Vyasa came out of the chambers, he was met by his mother, who asked him, Will this princess have a worthy son? Hearing her, he replied, The child born will be equal in strength to 10,000 elephants. He will be equal to a royal sage and will possess great learning, intelligence, and energy. However, because the princess has closed her eyes, the child born shall be blind. Upon hearing the words of her son, Satyavati said, How can one that is blind rule this world? How will he protect his race and the people of the world? You must again conceive children for the protection of humanity. Vyasadeva agreed and went away. In due course of time, Ambika gave birth to a male child who was blind. After the child's birth, it was given the name Dhritarashtra. Satyavati was anxious to beget another male child who could rule the world, and after consulting with Ambalika, she called for Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva came as was promised and approached the chambers of Ambalika. Ambalika, seeing the ugly features of Vyasa, turned pale with fear. After conception, the sage left the chambers and told his mother that because the queen had turned pale, the child born would be white in complexion. His name therefore would be Pandu, or one with a white complexion. In due course of time, Ambalika gave birth to a child endowed with auspicious marks. He was pale in color, but was possessed of great beauty. Indeed, it was this child who would become the future father of the Pandavas. Some time after this child was born, Satyavati approached the beautiful Ambalika and again asked her to conceive a child by Vyasadeva. The princess felt that she could not bear again to see the ugly features of the sage, and thus she sent into her chambers one of her maidservants who had the beauty of an apsara. When Vyasa entered the chambers, the maidservant offered respects to the sage and treated him kindly. She took her seat near him when asked. Vyasadeva was well pleased with her, and upon leaving told her, "You shall be a slave no longer. Your child will be justice personified and will be the foremost of intelligent men on earth." After leaving the chamber of the queen, Vyasa met his mother and informed her of the deception of the princess and how he had begotten a son by a Sudra woman. After speaking with his mother, Vyasa disappeared from sight. The child born of the maidservant was named Vidura. He was an incarnation of Yamaraj, and due to the curse of Mandavya Muni, he had to take birth on earth as a Shudra. Thus, from the wives of Vichitravirya, Vyasadeva begot 3 sons, Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. In this way, the Kuru race was continued. Thus ends the 4th chapter of the Adi Parva to the summary study of the Mahabharata entitled Vyasadeva begets progeny through the wives of Vichitravirya. Chapter 5 of the Adi Parva. The Pandavas are born. Upon the birth of these 3 sons, the earth began to prosper. There was an abundant harvest of crops, and the trees were filled with fruits and flowers. The seasons arrived and passed on time, and there was ample rainfall in the land of Bharata. The people became learned, brave, and honest, and under the influence of Maharaj Bhishma performed sacrifices for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu. The people of Hastinapur were so contented with the rule of Bhishma that they thought they were living in the Vaikuntha planets. Hearing of the prosperity of the Kurus, people came to take shelter in that kingdom. This is the influence of a great saintly king. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Yad yada charati shreshtas tattadeve tarojana sayapramanam kurute lokas tadanuvartate. Whatever action is performed by a great man, common men follow in his footsteps, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. If a saintly king engages the citizens in devotional service to Lord Vishnu, then the citizens automatically become happy and bright-faced. The kingdom automatically prospers. If a president or king engages his subjects in sense gratification, the whole situation becomes hellish, and no one is satisfied, as is seen in today's misdirected civilizations. The citizens in Bhishma's kingdom loved him as a father and always glorified his activities. In today's society, no one trusts the leaders, and they have to travel in bulletproof cars to protect themselves from the discontented citizens whom they have exploited. Such is the difference between today's so-called leaders and a saintly king like Maharaj Bhishma. Maharaj Bhishma raised the 3 children of the queens, Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura, as if they were his own. As Pandu grew, he excelled all men in archery, whereas Dhritarashtra excelled all in personal strength. As the training continued, it soon became known to everyone that in the 3 worlds there was no one equal to Vidura in devotion to Vishnu and knowledge of the dictates of morality. In due course of time, Pandu became king, for Dhritarashtra was blind and Vidura was born of a Sudra mother. Therefore, neither of them could accept the throne. As the boys grew in age, it was time to marry them to proper wives. Considering the situation, Maharaj Bhishma decided that 3 princesses were worthy of being married to the Kuru princess. They were Pritha, the daughter of Shurasen, Gandhari, the daughter of the king of Gandhara, and Madri, the daughter of the king of Madras. Bhishma had heard that Gandhari, the daughter of Subal, was granted a benediction by Lord Shiva that she could have 100 sons. Attracted to the idea of marrying Dhritarashtra to Gandhari, Bhishma, the grandfather of the Kurus, sent messengers to the father of Gandhari. King Subal at first hesitated, hearing that Dhritarashtra was blind, but taking into consideration the daughter of the Kurus, consented to marry her to Dhritarashtra. When the chaste Gandhari heard that her future husband was blind, she voluntarily blindfolded herself and accepted that vow for the rest of her life. Shakuni, the son of Subal, then took Gandhari to the city of the Kurus, Hastinapur, and formally handed her over to Dhritarashtra. She was duly married to Dhritarashtra, and she proved to be so chaste and devoted to her husband that she never spoke of men other than her husband or her superiors. Gandhari was the ideal chaste woman of all time. The ornament of a woman is her chastity or faithfulness to her husband. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna told Arjuna, Rityusarva haraschaham ubhavascha bhavishyatam kirtishvir vakshanharinam shmitir meda dritishama. I am all-devouring death, and I am the generator of all things yet to be. Among women I am fame, fortune, speech, memory, intelligence, faithfulness, and patience. In our Krishna consciousness movement, the Gurukula system of education is teaching chastity as the opulence of womanhood. A woman can never be independent in any stage of her life. In youth, she is under the protection of her father. In her middle years, she is taken care of by the husband. And in old age, she is taken care of by the eldest son. A woman who is chaste to her husband is elevated in transcendental qualities. In our Vrindavan community, we have seen that His Divine Grace, Srila Kirtanananda Swami, is very pleased when a young girl becomes faithful to her husband. The conclusion is that all young girls should follow in the footsteps of Gandhari and remain chaste to the husband given by the spiritual master or the father. The chief of the Yadu dynasty was Shurasena. He was the father of the greatly magnanimous Vasudeva. He also had a daughter named Prita, who was unrivaled in beauty among women on this earth. She was adopted by King Kunti Bhoj, who was childless. This was an agreement made previously by King Surasena and King Kunti Bhoj. They agreed that if a girl was born to Shurasena, she would be handed over to King Kunti Bhoj, who was childless. Thus Prita, who later became known as Kunti, lived in the palace of King Kunti Bhoj and looked after the duties of greeting important guests and brahmanas. Once upon a time, she pleased the easily angered brahmana Durvasa Muni. The Muni gave her a benediction that she could call any demigod from the higher regions and beget children of the highest quality. Kunti, while still a virgin girl, once called out of curiosity the sun god named Vivaswan. When she chanted the mantra, the sun god immediately appeared before her and said, I have come before you, O lotus-eyed lady. Please tell me what I can do for you. Kunti was surprised and told the sun god, I simply tested the mantra given to me by Durvasa Muni. O Lord, please forgive my offense. Vivaswan replied, Once called by this mantra, it cannot go in vain. It must bear fruit. Although you will beget a son by me, you shall remain a virgin girl. Thus, succumbing to the desires of the demigod, Kunti immediately conceived a child that was equal to the sun god himself. To keep her virginity intact, the sun god arranged that the child be born from the ear of Kunti, and for this reason the child was named Karna. The child was born with natural golden armor and glittering earrings. He was given the name Karna. The sun god immediately granted Kunti her virginity and ascended to heaven. Not knowing what to do, Kunti wrapped the child in a basket and set it afloat on the Ganges. She prayed to the sun god to protect the child. As the child floated down the river, he was picked up by the well-known chariot driver Adirath and his wife Radha. Kunti had given the child up out of fear of her relatives. When it was time for Kunti to be married, her father, Kunti Bhoj, invited the princes and kings from other countries. In this Swayamvara ceremony, she was to pick her own husband. The intelligent Kunti, upon entering the assembly hall, saw the handsome Pandu, proud as a lion, broad-chested, and endowed with great strength. He was like the moon amidst its many luminaries. Advancing with modesty, she placed the wedding garland around Pandu's neck, and thus she accepted the Kuru prince as her beloved husband. King Kunti Bhoj performed the wedding functions and bestowed upon Pandu a large dowry. Afterwards, Pandu took his new wife back to Hastinapur and installed her in his palace. Sometime after this, Bhishma set his heart upon getting Pandu married to a second wife. Accompanied by his army, he went to the kingdom of Madras. There he obtained Madri, the beautiful sister of Salya, and after paying a sufficient dowry, brought her back to Hastinapur, where she was married in great pomp to Pandu. Pandu then set his mind on conquering the world. With his vast army consisting of many Akshihini divisions of soldiers, Pandu subjugated one country after another. He first of all conquered the robber tribes of Asarna. He next headed toward the kingdom of Magadha, where there ruled a king named Dirga. This king was proud of his strength and had made numerous offenses against monarchs of other lands. Pandu broke the strength of his army and killed him on the field of battle. Taking everything in the king's treasury, he marched into Mithila and subjugated the Videhas. He then conquered the kingdoms of Kashi, Shumba, and Pundra. When all the kings of the world were thus defeated, they considered Pandu as a demigod like Indra, the king of heaven. They paid tribute to him and offered all kinds of wealth to gain his favor. Thus the Kuru king returned to his capital, taking with him his acquired wealth. After establishing his power over the earth, Pandu retired to the forest along with his two wives, Kunti and Madri. There they lived in opulence and enjoyed the beautiful wooded regions at the base of the Himalayan mountains. One day Pandu, while roaming about in the woods, saw a large deer that seemed to be the leader of a herd. He was engaged in sex with his female companion. Pandu pierced them both with 5 of his sharp arrows. The deer was not actually a deer, but a rishi's son of great ascetic merit, who was enjoying his mate in the form of a deer. When pierced in this way, the deer fell down, uttering cries like that of a human being. The deer then spoke to Pandu. O king, even men that are slaves to lust and anger, and who are ever sinful, never commit cruel acts as this one. Why have you killed me with your arrows while I was enjoying with my wife? Pandu replied, O dear, kings engage in the sport of killing deer in the same way as they kill opponents of religion. It does not become you to reproach me for a sin done in ignorance. Animals of this species are killed in the open or hidden from view. Formerly, the sage Agastya, while engaged in the performance of sacrifice, killed every deer in the forest and offered it in sacrifice to the demigods. You have been killed for the same reason. Following in the footsteps of the great sages, why do you reproach me? The deer then said, O king, I do not blame you for killing a deer in the forest or the injury you have done to me. But instead of acting so cruelly, you should have waited till the act of intercourse was completed. I am a Muni of the name Kendama, and I was engaged in sexual intercourse with this deer, because unrestricted sex life is not allowed in human society. You have killed me without knowing that I am a Brahmana, and therefore the sin of killing a Brahmana will not come upon you. However, because you have killed me while I was enjoying my mate, certainly your fate will be like mine. When you approach your wife for intercourse, the time of death will overcome you, and your wife will meet the same end. You have brought unhappiness to me when I was happy, and now grief will come to you when you were in happiness. Saying these words, the sage in the form of a deer left his body and attained the heavenly regions due to his ascetic merits. After the death of the deer, Pandu, along with his wives, were overwhelmed with confusion and frustration with the situation at hand. Pandu exclaimed, The wicked, even if born in pious families, are deluded by their passions. Although I am the son of the great Krishna Dvaipadana Vyas, I have engaged in the frivolous act of killing deer in the forest. Oh, how foolish I have been! The demigods have forsaken me. I shall now seek liberation. The great impediments to salvation are the desire to beget children and the other pleasures related to sex life. I shall live the life of an ascetic and bring my passions under control by severe austerities. I shall renounce my kingdom, and shaving my head I shall wander the earth, begging my sustenance from the trees standing here. I will no longer find fault with others, but have a friendly attitude devoted to the good of all creatures. The king then sent back to Hastinapur all the servants and wealth that he owned, and he also sent news of all that had happened. The elders in the court at Hastinapur became morose on hearing what had happened, and especially Dhritarashtra was affected by the turn of events. While in the forest, Pandu renounced all sense gratification and became like one of the great sages, although born of the Kshatriya race. The great rishis in the forest treated him as a brother, or like a son. Pandu understood that no one could attain the celestial kingdom without having a son. Also, he knew that his debt to his forefathers could not be paid unless he had children who could perform sacrifice to Lord Vishnu. When the rishis in the forest were desirous of visiting the heavenly realm, Pandu could not accompany them. He then requested Kunti in the following words: "For the continuation of the Kuru race, I want you to beget children by a Brahmana of ascetic merit. Without children to continue the dynasty of the Kurus, the whole world may fall into ruin without a powerful protector. Also, one has a debt to pay to his ancestors by begetting good children.